Do you know what's holding you back as a rider? Fear. Fear is what's keeping you from reaching your full potential as a rider. Whether you're new to motorcycles or you've been riding for years, fear can creep in and hold you back. It keeps you from leaning the bike, it keeps you from trusting yourselves in corners, or from even riding at all. Stay tuned to learn how to recognize your mistakes, conquer your fears, and take your riding to the next level. Let's start by identifying how fear shows up. Maybe you tense up on the bike when you're approaching a sharp corner. This can be things like locking out your arms, being heavy on the steering, or getting a death grip on the handlebars. Staying loose on the bike also allows the bike to sort out issues on its own, like unexpected bumps or anything else that can cause the bike to be upset, rather than you fighting to maintain control of the bike. Maybe you find yourself target fixating at whatever it is that you don't want to hit on the other side of a corner, like trees, rocks, a guardrail, or literally anything else. We naturally stare at things that are dangerous to us so that we can react to the threat in the event of an attack. But this is the exact opposite of what you should be doing on a motorcycle. You might hesitate to lean the bike because you're worried it'll slide out. This is where you have to learn how to trust the bike and your abilities. If you're hesitant to lean the bike into a corner, you're actively telling the bike not to lean. Combine this with being tense, and it's a very good way to ensure that the bike slides out while actively trying to improperly prevent it. Maybe you're always scanning for road hazards like gravel, sand, or other debris, and you're hyper fixating on the what ifs. Maybe you're afraid of dropping the bike and getting hurt or damaging the bike, and this one is especially common if you're recovering from a crash. These fears are normal and they're rooted in our survival instinct. However, there's a difference between being cautious and being scared. Fear often paralyzes you, while caution helps you make informed decisions. One big source of fear is riding outside of your comfort zone. For example, taking a blind corner too fast, worrying about obstacles that you can't see, or riding too fast for the weather conditions. These situations often come from riding beyond your limits, and it's something that we can address with the right techniques. More often than not, if you feel like you're close to a crash, or if you feel like you've entered a corner too quickly, if you just commit to the corner, you'll probably make it out without any issues. Let's pause for a moment. If you're a new rider, leave a comment below and ask a question about something that you're struggling with. If you're an experienced rider, answer a question or leave a comment sharing a tip that helped you progress as a rider. The importance of building a foundation. Riding a motorcycle is inherently dangerous, but it doesn't have to be scary. However, it is important that you never become complacent to the dangers of being on two wheels. The difference between riding fast safely and riding fast recklessly is technique. Before we get into the technique of properly holding the grips or the body position necessary to drag knee, we must first master training our eyes. We have to learn where to look, how to force ourselves to look away from the things that we're afraid of and towards where we want to go, and how to use our peripheral vision to scan for road hazards both near and far. Proper body positioning is much less important than proper eye placement. Target fixation is one of the primary causes of accidents on a motorcycle. Regardless if you're on the street or the track, you go where you look. I want you to follow this circle with your eyes. This is where we need to be looking when we ride a motorcycle. One thing that I do want to make very clear is I do not have eye tracking software for this. I am just placing a yellow dot on the screen and moving it with keyframes, so though this is not entirely accurate, it's as close as I can get it without having a true eye tracking software. Now, anytime I've mentioned this in my other videos, especially my short form content, people always comment, "This is how I drive a car." And while I'm sure it is, something about getting on two wheels flips a switch in our head. We end up staring directly in front of the front tire or at what we don't want to crash into. This results in us not looking far enough ahead. When you look far ahead, you don't feel as rushed, which gives your brain plenty of time to process the incoming information. This means that you will naturally ride safer when you're traveling at higher speeds. If you've ever recorded a ride or done a track day and felt like you were going really fast, but when you played back the footage, it looked like you were parking it in every corner, this is why. Now, if I replay this same clip, but I angle the camera down so you can't see as far ahead, you'll notice that it looks like we're traveling at a much higher speed because you aren't able to process the information as fast as it's coming in. We should look as far ahead as possible while scanning for road hazards using your peripheral vision. When we're on a racetrack, there are times that you won't even be looking at the corner that you're in. You're looking where you need to go so that you can properly set up for the next corner. I'll look at things like there's a jumbotron on the track that I go to that's on the opposite side of the track, but it lines up directly with the entrance to the next corner. So I'll stare at that jumbotron so that I'm on line for the next corner. This is something that we constantly have to work on, especially if you've taken a break from riding or if you're exhausted during a ride. I find that when I get exhausted after a full day of riding, I tend to start to target fixate towards the end of the day, and I have to consciously snap out of it and make myself look where I'm going. By mastering fundamental skills, you remove a lot of fear because you'll trust yourself and the bike. These are skills like proper eye placement, proper throttle and brake application, proper body positioning, and the proper lines through any given corner. Most crashes can be avoided by focusing on proper riding technique. I've learned this firsthand. The techniques that I've practiced on a racetrack have saved me more than once on the street. When you know how to handle a bike, you'll feel more in control, and that control replaces fear with confidence. But don't mistake complacency for confidence. When you become complacent, that's when mistakes happen. You always have to respect the bike and the road. One of the fastest ways to get hurt on a motorcycle is by overestimating your own abilities. How to get more comfortable on the bike. Overcoming fear is a process, and it starts by building comfort. So here's a few steps that'll help. Do parking lot drills. Practice slow speed maneuvers, emergency braking, and cornering techniques in a controlled environment. This is a safe way to build up muscle memory. When I first got into riding, I would start and end every single ride with some parking lot drills. This included U-turns, emergency braking, and weaving around obstacles, really similar to what you do in the MSF course. Bike setup. Get your bike adjusted for your weight and your riding style. Tire choice and suspension setup play a huge role in how the bike feels. If the bike isn't riding correctly, you will never be able to trust it. On my wife's R6, for example, we bought that bike, it came lowered, and that bike just rode like crap. The suspension geometry was all out of whack, and every single time you'd take a corner, you had to put a lot of pressure into the bars, and all the bike wanted to do was stand straight up. So I ended up having to mess with the suspension geometry, take it out for a ride, come back in, tweak it again, and now that bike handles really well. But if I hadn't known how to change that, she would have never been able to feel comfortable on that bike because it was so hard to ride. Mechanical soundness. Make sure that your bike is mechanically sound. Strange noises or mechanical issues make it hard for you to trust your bike. If the forks are leaking so bad that the handling sucks and the brakes are covered in fork oil, it's going to be almost impossible to ever feel comfortable on that bike because you can't trust it and it's not safe. Repetition. Ride your favorite roads over and over again. Take the long way home. The more you ride, the more comfortable you'll become. There is no shortcut to seat time. However, it's important that we focus on quality seat time. Putting 1,000 miles on over a weekend will help a lot with getting comfortable on a bike, but not all seat time is the same. A short ride where you're safely pushing your limits will do more for your skill than a long ride of holding a constant throttle in a mostly straight line. When people ask me how I became as good of a rider as I have, I always have the same answer. It's a numbers game. If you do your first track day and you've only ever done 10 laps, it's not fair to compare yourself to someone who has years of experience and thousands of laps around the same exact track. Track days. There's a saying that a single track day will teach you more about your bike and your skills than a year of street riding. You can practice in a safe, controlled environment without worrying about traffic or debris. Nobody's going to make a left turn in front of you. Nobody's playing on their phone. It's just you and the road. This is a great place to learn how you can hit your current limits and break through plateaus. A racetrack is the only place I'd recommend going if you want to push it to 100%. Just remember, a track day is not a race. It is a rider improvement program. There is no such thing as being too fast or too slow for the track. It's perfectly fine and recommended to only ride at a level that you're comfortable with. One thing I hear all the time from street riders that have never been to the track is, oh, if I go to the track, then, well, I'm going to kill myself there. And first off, that's the wrong mentality to have if you're on a motorcycle, period. But the reality of it is, riding on a racetrack is significantly safer than riding on the street. You can ride harder, faster, and if something goes wrong, you have ample runoff, you have gravel traps, and worst case scenario, you have an ambulance 2 minutes away. You're not going to end up being 40 minutes from a cell signal waiting on life flight to come in. And we've been there. We had a ride where a guy went down and one rider had to ride back down the mountain to where they had a cell signal and call in life flight. Like, that's just the reality of street riding. It is more dangerous 100% of the time. Coaching. If you have a headset, go for a ride with a trusted, more experienced friend who can coach you in real time. I've done this for my friends, helping them with body positioning, braking techniques, and various other things, and the improvements were immediate. Being able to be told what you're doing right or wrong in the moment will help you progress very rapidly.
The easiest way you can carry more speed through blind corners is by not applying the throttle until you know exactly where the exit of the corner is. So I'll use this corner as an example. It's not exactly a blind corner, but if I were to try to get on the throttle here, I don't have anywhere to go. So I wait, and now I can get on the throttle and just slingshot out of that corner.
Past that, I'd highly recommend professional coaching regardless of your skill level.
And you're gonna stay tighter longer than you think you can or think you should on this corner until you can see those outside rumbles appearing. That's when you stand the bike up and start driving. If you start driving hard with the bike leaned over, it's gonna spin because you've been leaned over so long on that side especially. But you're basically trying to stand it up and drive off of here and find traction at all costs. But you're trying to get yourself to these outside rumbles.
The racers at the pinnacle of our sport are still getting coaching regularly, so you should be too. This also helps make sure it's not a case of the blind leading the blind and that more experienced friend has less experience than they think they do. And this is unfortunately the case with a lot of people. We tend to overestimate our abilities, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it too. Now, I have no affiliation with any of these, but if you want more information on riding schools, schools like the Yamaha Champs Riding School or California Superbike School are a great resource if you want more information on coaching. There are hundreds of lesser-known coaching programs out there that offer a very similar level of coaching, so do your research and choose whomever fits your needs and budget. The MSF course is a great starting point, but it barely scratches the surface of what it takes to be a skilled rider. The MSF course is quite literally the tutorial, so it's important that you always seek additional training. The role of mindset. A huge part of overcoming fear is changing your mindset. Here's a few tips. Visualize success. Before you ride, picture yourself nailing that corner or handling whatever it is that you're struggling with ease. This is actually something that I do before a race. I'll put in my headphones and I'll make sure that the sound canceling mode is on so I don't have to hear anything else. Listen to some music, close my eyes, and I'll sit down on my chair and just focus on my race. All I'm thinking about is my reference points, my brake markers, and my apex. I want to make sure that I'm in the right headspace. Getting in the correct headspace before you ride is crucial. Focus on progress. Set small, achievable goals for each ride. Maybe it's working on smoother throttle control, braking a little bit later, or carrying a little bit more corner speed. Small wins build confidence. If you try to improve everything all at once, you're setting yourself up for failure. Taking each little win builds a massive amount of confidence and progress in a very short amount of time. Don't compare yourself. Everybody progresses at their own pace. Focus on your own journey, not what others are doing. This is part of what we mean by ride your own ride. Some people are comfortable taking more risks. Some don't understand what they're doing wrong and how close they are to a crash. Everyone has an entirely different background, so it's only logical that everyone progresses differently. You build confidence through seat time and experience, not just by matching somebody else's pace. Fear often stems from overthinking. When you're constantly worrying about what could go wrong, you're not focused on what you need to do in the moment. Trust your skills, stay present, and ride within your limits. Mistakes, breaks, and plateaus. Now let's take a moment to cover setbacks. Mistakes, crashes, and even taking a long break from riding, like winter, can set you back mentally, and that's okay. What matters is how you approach your return. Consistency is key to progressing as a rider. If you're not practicing regularly, it's easy to plateau or even regress without realizing it. Just because somebody rides 20,000 miles a year doesn't mean that they're a skilled rider. If they're not pushing themselves to improve, they're just repeating that same experience over and over. There's a big difference between having 10 years of experience and having 1 year of experience that you've repeated 10 times. The good news is that with the right combination of practice, seat time, and coaching, you can progress very quickly and very safely. Anytime we've made a mistake, we should strive to understand exactly what happened. Every mistake can be treated as a learning opportunity. If we don't learn from it, we are destined to repeat it. Breaking through plateaus can be challenging and frustrating. Sometimes we need to change things up if we want to progress. This can be changing your style of riding, practicing on dirt instead of only on asphalt, doing long multi-day trips instead of just short rides that last a few hours. Maybe you want to ride in a different environment that you normally do, like pulling the bike out when it rains instead of leaving it parked. Or maybe you decide to get into racing instead of just doing track days so that there's more of a drive to ride harder. There's a near limitless possibility of how you can change up your riding, but sometimes taking a break from the norm is all it takes for something to click so you can start knocking down barriers. Fear doesn't have to hold you back. With the right mindset, consistent practice, and proper training, you can turn fear into respect for the bike and confidence in your abilities. If you found this video helpful, check this one out. I think you'll enjoy it too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.